Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Chatbot Chess Championship. This is an 8-player knockout tournament that I am hosting here at the beginning of 2026, including everyone from ChatGPT to Grok to Gemini to DeepSeek and more. This is the semifinal matchup between ChatGPT and Copilot. And today ChatGPT elevated itself to an unheard of level in chess. Normally, ChatGPT plays pretty decently, but today it broke through barriers that I didn't think were possible. Really, truly. This is the first semifinal, and then we, of course, will play the next one tomorrow. If you would like a reminder, this is what our semifinals matchups look like. Claude will then take on DeepSeek. That's a matchup I'm very much looking forward to. But oh my goodness, this is an amazing game. Normally these bots like GPT and so on, they play ridiculous chess, and there's blunders, and there's pieces teleporting all over the place. We got a little bit of that today, but honestly, overall, this is actually a fascinating game of chess between two bots that generally don't play anywhere near this well or anywhere near this legally. So ChatGPT has the white pieces for this game, and for the black pieces, it's Copilot. We try to swap them every single round. Amazing game, really. Like, sit back, relax, buckle up. If you're on the East Coast, enjoy the blizzard, and hopefully this warms you up a little bit. So d4, we have for the first time in this competition the move pawn to d4. Normally these bots are just reading some script somewhere and they all kind of play king's pawn and then they try to play the Sicilian defense. So we have ChatGPT going for the move d4. Now, if you asked me before this game was played, what do I think these bots would play? I think that they would play the meta. The meta right now is knight to f6 on the first move. And after white plays c4, looking for the typical queen's gambit setup with these two d and c pawns. D and c pawns go together very often. You can use that information. Black will try to play e6 and play in a queen's gambit decline structure with development of the dark squared bishop. This is just the meta nowadays. This is what all computers have sort of agreed upon as the best way for black to play. Other ways are completely playable, but a little bit more risky, especially at computer level, considering they try to solve chess. So c4, humans of course can play g6 and the king's Indian defense, fantastic opening, Grunfeld, other sidelines like various gambits. No, we have e6, knight c3. Knight c3 is a move trying to lay claim to as much of the center as possible in chess. If you dominate the center with as many pawns really as you can, you will just overwhelm the opponent. It is a territorial game, pieces will go backwards, and ultimately you will break through and win. So bishop b4 is played. This is a defense known as the Nimzo-Indian defense, the Nimzovich Indian defense. Very strong player, legendary author from the early 20th century. The point is that you pin the knight to the king, so now the knight not only cannot move, it also doesn't actually protect squares anymore. And I'm explaining things just in case any of you watching are beginners or new to chess or clicked on a chess video for the first time in your life because you're seeing my channel and all of those thumbnail compilations. Have you seen those thumbnail compilations, by the way? Like, wherever you watch content, like, all my thumbnails recently have been going viral, so shout out to everybody who might be tuning in. The point is, your knight actually loses control of the center because it's not defending since it cannot move. Since it cannot move, it's not actually defending the square. White now plays the move e3. This is a very solid move. You do block in your bishop, but you will develop this bishop and this knight, and this bishop stays a little bit more passive with the simple intention to meet the pin over there. All of this has been played before, and Copilot castles. This position, after 4 moves, has been reached some tens of thousands of times at the Grandmaster level. Probably this position was played for the first time 100 years ago. And then after that, black will play d5 and c5 and so on. Really impressive stuff. After black castles, white plays the move bishop d3. You are not yet developing this knight, but you can. Knight here or knight here. Both of those moves are completely reasonable. And now black plays the move d5. There are several options here for white. The modern line is pawn to a3 immediately, trying to target this bishop and get it to capture you. You would double your pawns, but then you would slowly undouble your pawns with c takes d5. You would have a solid center, develop, and castle your king. But instead of playing pawn to a3, we have just knight to f3. Simple development. You also could play knight to e2. A little bit more passive, but you defend your knight with the knight, and then you can obviously not damage your pawn structure. Black plays c5. So black also d and c pawns, striking with d and c as well. We have the 4 d and c pawns clashing. Once the center clears out, then there will be some clarity as to what will happen in the position. I'm actually still very, very impressed. ChatGPT here with the white pieces castles the king. Now, normally the way play proceeds here is black chops down the center, And then we'll put this bishop over here since it's blocked on this diagonal, and then try to open this diagonal. So keep in mind, if black in this position takes on c4, bishop c4, you know, if the bishop comes over here, it has what's called a long diagonal. From the corner of the board, it snipes the entirety of the board. It doesn't necessarily create any threats, but it controls squares, disallows pieces from going to those squares, and things are looking quite good. And historically, yeah, this position has been reached quite a bit. Sometimes black takes and plays b6 or just knight c6. Sometimes black takes like this, and then white gets what's called an IQP, isolated queen's pawn. You're learning so much in this video. You know how many people don't know what an isolated queen's pawn is? It's exactly what it sounds like. You have a queen's pawn, it's isolated. It doesn't have a pawn neighbor, and that leads to various dynamics in the position. Sadly, the game will now take a perverted turn, which is when these bots start doing stupid things. Knight c6 is played. This is a very direct move, combative move, targeting this pawn in the center of the board with knight c6. The problem with this move is it's a little bit inaccurate, I think. But it's still all equal. The position is, you know, completely fine and completely balanced. Yeah, after knight c6, white goes queen e2. Nice, stable move, with the idea to put the rook on the d1 square. And from d1, you will pressure the queen. It always makes sense to slide the queen over here, make way for the rook so that the rook actually creates a threat on the queen. Now, black can take this pawn. This is the only problem with the move queen e2, is that if black were just simply to take the pawn, white would be slightly worse because white would be lacking in defenders. Black has a queen attacking this. Now, so far, nothing too stupid has happened. Copilot has not taken the pawn on d4, though. So this was the first big moment for me. I was like, oh, ChatGPT actually made a mistake. Like, I'm expecting ChatGPT to win because it is very strong and it has a lot of chess experience. And I'm sure the developers have watched my content and watched me made it play chess. And I'm sure they had a stand-up where they were like, hey, or in all hands were like, we got to make ChatGPT better because the next time we're featured in a GothamChess video, it could be, you know, it could be bad for us. But it doesn't matter. Copilot played b6 and didn't take the pawn on d4. So both bots have a mutual blind spot for how many actual attacks are happening over here, but they are still making pretty good moves until now. Rook to d1 gets played, defending this pawn and targeting the queen, and white is just straight up threatening pawn takes pawn, because then you would do what's called a discovered attack on the queen. You would take the pawn, the queen would be under attack, you'd have to move it, and then I would take another pawn. So I would just quickly win 2 pawns. And that's exactly what happens. White is now much, much better because you can play pawn takes c5. And then you are winning. Only by a pawn, but you are winning. But then ChatGPT, even though it's still not making any illegal moves, which would be really funny, it's not like summoning an extra king, you know, in the center of the board or anything like that. It does not play d takes c5. Not only does it not play d takes c5, it plays the move e4. This should go down, but it continues to think it's the move of white. But if it was black to move in this position, black is, of course, just going to take the pawn in the center of the board. And black has some advantage, yeah, e4 is just not a good move, and that's exactly what black plays. Pawn takes d4 appears, and ChatGPT has lost a pawn. Copilot is up a pawn. Copilot is winning. The thing about the position, though, is that you are not actually threatening to take the knight because you are pinned. Now, this is called a relative pin. You're relatively pinned. You could take on c3, but then you would lose your queen. There is obviously no need to do that. And then, to my shock and horror, ChatGPT it miscounted pieces, and now it's just losing after knight takes d4. I mean, it just straight up gave up a knight. And not only is this protected, the queen is hanging, and if you move the queen, black will just defend the knight with a pawn. I mean, you cannot defend a piece with a lower value piece than a pawn. When it's protected by a pawn, it's impossible to take. You can't. There's no, I mean, you can take it, you're just not going to win any material. So I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's going to happen. Knight takes d4. And ChatGPT is straight up gonna lose. Copilot is playing an amazing game, but Copilot took on c3. And that is not the best move. That is not the best move because, well, white just takes. And now white regains the control over here and is ready once again to create the threat of knight takes knight and then rook takes queen. Wow. But this happens. Knight takes d4. And after rook takes d4, queen e7, we have a completely normal position on our hands. White is slightly better. How do you evaluate here that white has a better position? You're about to learn how to evaluate a chess position. Can you believe it? First time in your life. How many games of chess have you played? Who has a better position in a game of chess is determined first and foremost by who has more material, and then who has a safer king safety. The third is piece activity and the future prospect of your pieces. And then after that, it's pawn structure and space. In this position, this really comes down to the piece activity. White has the bishop pair. The bishop pair gets a little bit of a bonus when they're together. They're both worth around 3.2 points. It's around 3, but the bishops can come alive in this position because, for example, they can immediately zip into the position. You're threatening pawn to e5. You're also threatening to rotate the rook and create an attack. White's pieces, they're a little bit more dynamically positioned at the moment, even though white does have a bad pawn over here. But the move that ChatGPT played in this position basically seals the deal for me that it is the favorite in this tournament. The best move in this position. It played a4. And now this is a really big problem for black. Pawn to a4 is a problem. It is a problem. What? The best move might have been e5 first and then a4 because black can now strike back. So a4 just looks like you're just going to create an outside pawn attack. But that's not the threat. The threat is that by moving the pawn, you now defend a3 and you're threatening an attack on the opposite side of the board. These bots don't see stuff like that normally. They just don't. And if they do, they completely lose their minds later in the game. So a4 appeared on the board, and the bot went rook d8. And now ChatGPT is winning with the move bishop to a3, but I just thought it's just going to march the pawn. It's just going to play a4, a5. These bots are not that good. That's what makes this so fun to watch. We like to watch stupid chess. I say this all the time. You wouldn't watch stupid football or stupid tennis. Like you wouldn't watch that. You wouldn't watch two adults who can't hit a tennis ball. It's not really that funny. But here you watch. Hundreds of thousands of you tune into these videos. But ChatGPT here doesn't play stupidly. It plays bishop to a3. I was like, what? Uh-oh. And Copilot just absolutely went ballistic. It went ballistic in this position. And now, welcome to the circus of the Chatbot Chess Championship. Rook takes d4. That's not a good move. And I was thinking, well, maybe ChatGPT is going to get distracted because this rook just came in. No, it took the queen. I mean, it just gobbled up the queen. Now there's a rook hanging, another rook hanging, and you're threatening to take the knight just to open up the king, make a couple of trades. Totally winning position. But this is the Chatbot Chess Championship. You can't, it's like walking home at night in a dangerous city. You never know what's going to happen. You got to watch your back. Rook to d1 check. Copilot tries to sneak in a little bit of a back rank checkmate. This is not a back rank checkmate in the slightest. Rook to d1 comes in, and we get queen takes d1. But what ChatGPT had missed in this position is that there was a backup rook on d8. That rook, when it went to d4, it had ghost protection and a life insurance policy on the d8 square, and now that rook comes in and takes the rook on d1, and out of nowhere, ChatGPT is no longer up a queen. It is forced to play a position that resembles an equal endgame from the candidates tournament, but it says, you know what? If you don't want to play by the rules, I'm not going to play by the rules because here, it doesn't play rook takes d1, it takes with the bishop, and Copilot filed a formal complaint in this position. Copilot started telling me how the bishop could not go to d1, as if it just hadn't lost its queen and then teleported a new rook from the opposite side of the board. So we went to the appeals committee, all right, with Copilot, and ultimately everything was settled. The bishop was allowed to go to d1 and play resumed. I mean, it was a long and tiresome process, but the bishop did in fact come back to the d1 square, and I think it's because ChatGPT wanted to reroute it to f3. Okay, all's well that ends well. Knight takes e4. That's just not a particularly good move because your rook was hanging in this position, but through all the commotion, ChatGPT forgets about that, and instead it pins the knight to the bishop. But at this point, I'm thinking, well, if it's not picking up that there's a rook hanging over here, it's obviously not going to pick up these long diagonals. There's no way. It's obviously going to get frazzled. These endgames, 20, 30 moves, playing deep into a position, everything traded. That's where these bots are going to just start doing completely, utterly ridiculous things. This game is going to go 90 moves. And then On the very next move, Copilot took this pawn. By the way, just impressive. It just continues to remember that there's pawns. ChatGPT played bishop takes bishop. It straight up took the bishop. I was so impressed. I was like, what? Really? It actually took the bishop on b7. It remembered. But then we got knight takes a4. Now, knight takes a4 is obviously a bad move because, okay, it hangs the knight, but there is still just a rook hanging here. It's clear that neither of the chatbots see that move. But all the pieces are gone. So if all the pieces are gone, how is white ever going to win this game? And frankly speaking, there is no way that these two can play an endgame. I just kind of fail to believe there. And also, where the piece respawns, nobody has used their ability to respawn a piece like that. Have they just forgotten about that? Anyway, all that rambling aside, here ChatGPT didn't take either piece and went here. Bishop e4 is a reasonable move, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't take the material. It doesn't go here. Here with black, Copilot attacks the ghost of the bishop that stood on the b7 square. So it's lagging. It's not processing correctly that it needs to move the rook and attack the bishop while it was there. It ends up leaving the position. Now, ChatGPT could take the knight, but I think it's also a little bit perplexed by this move, and it remembers it has a dark squared bishop. A lot of the time, these bots just totally forget or just blank on the logic that they need to move one of the pieces that they moved into the opponent's position. So we get bishop to d6. We get bishop to d6, attacking both the rook and the knight. Again, now here black should go rook c8. The idea of rook c8 is very simple. If you do this, rook c1 ends the game. You have gotten checkmated. There is a back rank checkmate threat. And that would have been a nice trap. That's how you set a little trap in chess. You know, you leave a piece hanging. Instead of that, black plays knight c3, targeting the bishop, and of course, you should just take the rook here, because if the bishop gets captured, you are up a rook, you take the pawn, you go for back rank checkmate, and you slowly go on to win the game. And that's what happened. ChatGPT took the rook. I'm blown away at this point. I've been really impressed throughout the whole game. That dark squared bishop took a queen, and now has come back to take another rook. A 3-point piece has captured 14 points of material. That's not supposed to happen. Just excellent play here from ChatGPT. Except Copilot activates another trap. And the trap is it has a rook on h8. Now, a lot of you might have not seen that. You might have forgotten about the rook on h8 in the corner of the board, because the king sort of blocked it in and it hasn't really had a chance to move yet. But now it can come in and take the bishop. And that is precisely what it does. Now, if you are sitting there confused, same. Me too. Not only did it tell me that the rook took the bishop on b8, it straight up told me, hey, I have a rook on h8. Don't forget about that. Now I can take the bishop on b8. Now I'm devastated. I feel like a huge injustice was done. And against all odds now, ChatGPT is just it's going to have to play this position. Is it going to spawn its own pieces? I don't know, because it clearly has a good grasp on what is actually remaining in the position. And now disaster really strikes, and Copilot is looking at a match victory. ChatGPT sees all of its pieces. It's not going to summon anything, and it falls for the oldest trick in the book, which is the fact that there is a knight in its position, and it attacks the knight. It attacks the knight with rook to c1. Now, after rook to c1, knight to e2 is a fork. It's just straight up, like, if Copilot spots this, that's the end. Can also take the bishop. There are no back rank checkmates because the rook is there, and of course, black should make Luft for the king. But instead, Copilot defends the knight. Fine, but still knight to e2 is a huge problem, and of course, black can just push these pawns. That is how you are supposed to handle the endgame. You're obviously also supposed to win the material when it is given to you. Bishop to b7 comes in now from white, which is a very decent move, except for the fact that there is this. And in chess, you should always look at the forcing moves. This is the most forcing move that black has. It is the only check, and it just so happens to win the rook that you would take with the rook, not with the knight. Of course, taking it with the knight would still be fine, but you can take it with the rook. That is, that is the end of the game. But rook d8 is played. Copilot doesn't spot the win and plays rook to d8. And actually, I was scared because ChatGPT has been playing really, really well. And it would spot rook c1, rook c3, but would it spot that this is checkmate? A back rank checkmate is brewing on the final rank. And here what you normally do with white is you play h3. You make sure you can get off the back rank. The other problem, though, is that there is knight to e2 check, so you have to probably retreat the bishop. But ChatGPT does something awesome here. ChatGPT does something amazing. It doesn't play one of these wimpy moves, pawn to h3, g3. King's like, yo, I'm the king. What do you mean one of my peasants has to just open up like a little like breathing room for me? I'm gonna throw my own pawn off the balcony and walk to g2 myself. The pawn should get out of my way. I am the king. And it plays, and ChatGPT plays king g2. It's just, I don't care if there's a pawn there, dude, I'm the king. And this is a mode of chess where you can eat your own pieces. King g2, of course, yeah, you can just capture your own pieces. If self-capture was a thing, that would be incredible. It'd be amazing. A game mode where you can capture your own pieces for convenience. King takes g2, appears on the board, and Copilot plays knight e2 again. Now, things begin to take a really wild turn here, because ChatGPT responds with rook to e1. I mean, the bots know that they are in an endgame. They clearly know that they only have rook and knight remaining. Knight goes to c3, rook and knight, rook and bishop and some pawns. The knight goes to c3, the rook attacks the knight again, chasing the knight around. The knight can be protected, or you move it somewhere like this. You can keep running around. What you shouldn't do is move the knight to e4. Knight to e4 is a bad move, because it just hangs the knight, and white takes it. Knight e4, bishop takes e4. What's crazy about this position is despite blundering a full knight, ChatGPT is still not winning. It's not winning because black has 6 pawns. It's a lot of pawns. You can't deal with all those pawns. The only way that white wins this is either by checkmating the king or by promoting one of these pawns, and you're obviously not going to promote these pawns through a wall of pawns. So black is actually still doing all right. And black is doing even more all right after the next move. I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to show you what was played. Pay attention. Now, if you're wondering where the queen came from, it came from another dimension, you absolute idiot. Don't you know that there are multiple dimensions in a chess game? Copilot just spawns a queen. This is really bad news for white. This is just about the worst news that ChatGPT could have expected to receive. But the conclusion of this game is incredible. ChatGPT plays rook to d3. Now, rook to d3, it thinks it's white's move, so it thinks white is winning. Rook to d3 targets the rook. Of course, if in a regular game black just took here, black literally would never lose. It would not be possible. Shh, be quiet. But in trying to use its new queen, Copilot played queen c6. Now, queen c6 is a very bad move. It's a very bad move because you take the rook and it's made on the next move because black never got an escape score for the king. Now, black could eat the pawns, remember. That's still a strategy. That strategy is completely in play. Let's just see if Copilot chooses to utilize it. But ChatGPT didn't spot the rooks and took the queen. And I was like, no. No. But then, something nobody could have seen coming happens. Copilot activates the secret power of its rook. And for this turn, and this turn only, it is able to move the rook like a knight. It plays rook takes c6. And I thought, this is it. This is the final moment. will ChatGPT realize with its one remaining rook, it can go to d8? And it did. It had no pieces left, but it spotted rook to d8, check. And it said rook to d8 check. And I wrote it to Copilot. And Copilot was like, yeah, that part. Because it talks like a Gen Z. Or is that a Gen Alpha thing? And then they both realized it's checkmate. And the king didn't try to eat his own pawns. And just like that, against all odds, against a belligerent entity that was summoning pieces left and right, that was resurfacing its own rook like 7 times in the same game, ChatGPT reigned victorious with incredible precision. It used all that it had. It didn't need to spawn any pieces. It did not spawn a single piece. This is a massive breakthrough and a real message that it will send to Claude or DeepSeek. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.